Hello, everyone. My name is Alicia with the Organization for Professional Astrology, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Master Astrologer Moon Zlotnick of Astrology by Moon Rabbit. Hi, Moon.
Hi there, Alicia.
Hi, hi. Moon is a published author and with a second book on the way, as far as I understand. And Moon will be leading a track at the OPA 2024 retreat happening in Park City, Utah, October 16th through 21st on death charts. Moon, we're very excited to talk to you.
Thank you.
We'll hop right in. You have a very interesting track that you will be leading on death charts. Many of us are very familiar with natal birth charts, but what are death charts in astrology?
So, a death chart is a chart constructed for the date, time, and place that someone dies. And um, I didn't ever think or choose to kind of go into this field of astrology. Rather, it feels more like it's a destined kind of experience for me. So, the origin of this is very organic. It's almost the 19th anniversary of when my twin died, July 23rd, 2005. And I'd already been doing astrology for at least 30 years. And I was fortunate enough to be with her when she took her last breath. And being an astrologer, of course, I looked at the clock. And it took quite a long time before I could kind of make deeper sense of that chart, but it helped me so much understand why, because I think when we lose people, there's all these questions about like why and why did this happen now? And is there anything that I can learn from this experience? So that's what death charts are really, is that they become a way for me to work with people who are grieving, to bring this cosmic perspective, this kind of soul-based perspective, so that something that seems and is really tragic might actually have some meaning for them in a different way.
Thank you for that explanation, and I'm so sorry for the loss of your
Thank
sister.
you.
I myself lost a brother, not a twin, but I definitely understand sibling loss,
Yeah.
and but I can't imagine what it would be like to lose a twin because I know there are different sort of
Yeah.
biological implications there. So
Yeah.
sorry for that.
Thank you.
So that would explain then what drew you specifically to the study of death
Yeah,
charts.
that's the
Yeah,
origin story right there.
amazing.
Yes.
An an interest, like you said, it's faded in some way. So while you didn't choose it, there is sort of, I'm sure your chart says a lot about why maybe that's the case. And I know we'll get to that
Mhm.
shortly.
Okay.
Um, can you explain your method or approach to interpreting death charts?
Yes. So, let me say first that I'm hoping that other people will go on to study this beyond what I'm bringing, into the book that I'm writing about it, because I feel like this is very preliminary. But what I've come to understand is that the planets aren't as dependent as the signs they're in. Because, for example, a sun in a death chart doesn't give you anything about the personality of what's going on because it's about a moment in time. So this isn't really horary astrology, and it isn't natal chart astrology. So the planetary relationships, the planets on angles, planets on aspect, they kind of rise to the top in terms of telling the story about the moment the person has passed. But the real heart of the reading is taking that death chart and turning it into a biwheel with the client's natal chart, and then looking at the eclipses and the transits as a way to bring this perspective. This is kind of what's up for you now, and this is what you might be experiencing. And this is a way to look at it differently and reframe what's happening so you can have kind of a long-term or a positive perspective on it. And, it's kind of a fine line because people have to grieve. I'm not saying that grief that we're going to bypass that. And I'm not a grief counselor, but I do think astrology is very wonderful and unique in this kind of larger perspective that I can bring to people.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And and just on that note, how do you ensure that readings are empowering rather than fear-inducing? And can you share a memorable experience or case study where a death chart reading provided significant insights?
Okay, yes, thank you very much. Well, the first thing I want to say is that none of this is about predicting death. And I think that people have lots of fears about that. And the loss has already happened. So the worst thing has already happened. Do you know what I mean? And so this is about, from my perspective, really, is there a way that you can look at this and kind of understand that maybe there's a cosmic lesson inherent in it? And it's like I say, it's kind of a fine line, but so I want to give you the chart example, the case study, because this is, I think, really useful. Okay, so this was a man who was in his uh, middle 60s, and uh, when his wife was, so been married to the same woman for 40 years, and they'd raised children, and they were both in mental health fields. They were both professionals. And when his wife was in her late 40s, her best friend needed a kidney, and she was a match. So she donated the kidney. And when she was on the operating table, they had a terrible problem, and she came out of the surgery with a traumatic brain injury. So she was never the same. Because of the traumatic brain injury, over the next few years, she couldn't work, and her personality got really aggressive. So she lost her friends. Her kids didn't want to have anything to do with her. So he became the sole caretaker. In her death chart, Juno was on the ascendant, and all of the other planets and asteroid were on the opposite side of the chart in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th houses. And I didn't know any of the history, but I just looked and I said, oh, you were all alone in this, weren't you? And I could just see him feeling like it wasn't his fault. People feel so much regret and remorse around death, because we're so powerless. And so people think, oh, I should have done this, or if I could have done this. And he blamed himself for the fact that he couldn't keep his kids involved. But I said to him, no, look, here's the story the chart tells, is that you were alone in this loss. So, I mean, he was very grateful. I mean, you can tell, and he said that to me. So there are these very concrete things that this can share, and that this can offer and share with people, that I don't think we have any other way of discerning that kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, and sometimes I mean, thank you for sharing that, Moon. And sometimes even like you said, the worst thing has already happened, and sometimes just being able to recontextualize it. And I keep thinking back to what you said about sort of a fatedness of it all, that can sometimes oddly give a sense of reassurance, or like this was meant to be sort of your journey. So
Yes.
thank you. Um, and so, how can individuals use insights from a death chart reading to live more consciously and purposefully?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. And it's obviously highly individualistic, right? But I want to tell you a story. So after I lost my twin, I found an organization for twinless twins. So people who had twin loss, and they had a retreat. And in that retreat, the twins would get up and they would tell the story of what happened. And I was very, very struck, because this man got up with his wife, and he couldn't say a word. His wife had to tell the story of what happened. And he was like frozen. I could see that he was like absolutely frozen in place. And I just thought this is so tragic because he stopped living his life when his twin died. And so I think it's really important for people to understand that, I mean, this is grief is, I think, one of the hardest things we ever have to deal with. And, we deal with it all the time, or we don't deal with it. But it's important to have like a whole toolbox of things. And I think a death chart can just be another place where people can find some kind of relief or understanding or cosmic perspective.
Certainly. That's a very interesting story. And what advice would you give to those who are interested in learning more about death charts or studying them themselves?
Well, I hope by the end of 2025 to have a book in publication so people can study and learn from what I've learned. And the way that I learned was I put out a call to my clients and I just, they came in with the loss of the chart of somebody they loved. And I gathered information from them and then I applied it. So I think at this point, it's such a new field. And I did present about this briefly at other Oprah retreats, and some seasoned astrologers I know kind of emailed me and they said, oh, I looked at when my dad died. And, just looking at it from what you taught about was so helpful. So that's about, coming to the retreat at Oprah and taking my track. Of course, that would be wonderful. And if they're interested in buying the book, and I am planning on teaching more about the material and creating a course along with creating the book. So I'm hoping to be teaching about that more over time.
Fantastic. Well, we can't wait until your book is released. Your
Thank
second
you.
book, correct?
Right.
Yes. And then I guess what would you find most rewarding, or what do you find most rewarding about your work with death charts?
Well, I guess there are two answers. And one is that I feel my twin with me a lot when I do the work. So that was an unexpected benefit. And the other is, it really is for me focusing on the feedback that my clients give me about how this helped them let go of something, or it helped them forgive themselves about something, or it helped them change a perspective on what had happened. And so I get a lot of really wonderful feedback, both after the session when I talk to the person, but people email me a lot as time goes by. And, it just is really important work. That's all I can say.
Certainly, thank you. And is there anything else that you would like to share about your journey or insights from reading death charts?
The I'm going to go back to the most kind of strong commonality. Well, I'll tell another story. So about a month ago, I did a reading, and this woman divorced her husband. They were high school sweethearts. They'd never had any other relationships. They'd been together. They had two children. They'd been together for a really long time. And uh, a month or two after the divorce, he committed suicide. And so she felt like it was her fault. She was the one who asked for the divorce. He did not want to get divorced. And then that's what she thought. So when I did the death chart, and in this case, I asked for his birth information because I thought something was going on with him. And as we talked, I asked questions, and it became really clear to her that he had been clinically depressed and was clinically depressed for much of their marriage, and that this was not the cause. This was not the divorce. Yes, it may have added, but it was not the cause. And this woman has, excuse me, gotten back in touch with me a couple different times because she talked to her daughter, who, the whole family just felt like they were at fault. And it just was a relief for them to feel like they could let go of that. So I want to say one thing about the workshop, because when you deal with death, it's heavy. And so we're going to be looking at charts, of course, and I'm going to be presenting material, but I have ritual, I have song, I have movement, I have things to brighten up and lighten up the mood so that we're not just spending days sunk in people's grief. Because I think people don't want to sign up for a workshop about death and loss because it's painful. So I promise that there will be comic relief and other kinds of relief built into the 3-day track that I'm teaching at OPA.
That's amazing. And that's also a very, very sad story. And I can see where the family, would have absolutely immediately thought it was their fault. But yeah, I think having that context from the natal chart was important in that case. So when people join your track, and I'm assuming there's probably only a spot or two left, so I hope that folks will join. Very interesting. Um, what should they bring? How might they prepare
Yes.
for your track?
Yes. So I will be contacting everybody in advance because I do want everybody to bring the death chart of somebody important in their lives. And unfortunately, everybody has that experience, especially since COVID. It's kind of even more than it used to be. So I will be working with the topic globally, and then each individual person will be working with that death chart as a way to bring some understanding to them.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your topic. Very, very interesting. I think anyone could benefit from it, especially if they're going through an immediate sort of loss. And again, you will be presenting at the OPA 2024 retreat in Park City, Utah. Folks, if you haven't bought your tickets already to join Moon's track, please do. And it was fantastic speaking with you.
Nice talking to you too, Alicia. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Okay, have a good day.